Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Roundup. This is number 404, so I guess I probably should have opened up with a 404 error joke or just a blank screen or something, but I don't know. I'm not the best at jokes like that. I didn't even pick up last week until after the fact that last week was number 403 that aired on 4/3, April 3rd. So yeah, oh well. Anyway, enough stupid number jokes. Let's jump in and see what's been going on in the past week. First up, I just wanted to talk about a post from a few weeks ago about the Dreamcast VMU replacement shells, because that Kickstarter campaign is about to end, and I was able to get my hands on a production sample, and it was absolutely great. The quality was exactly what you would want. It felt just as good as the original, and I had completely forgotten, but Martin from Retro Gamer Store was the person who had helped Video Games New York out with that. So that explains it. That's why the quality is so good, because it's made by somebody who has a ton of experience making really high quality injection molded shells. So I just wanted to talk about this one more time, just to let everybody know the quality is absolutely there. And if you want one of these, definitely check out the Kickstarter. And I think it unlocked a couple of extra colors or something, which you could always change if you had pre-ordered one of the colors and then another color was announced and you want that instead. So, I wanted to put this first this week because I'm hoping that if anybody wanted one of these, they hear it before the campaign ends and are able to pick this up. So links are for everything are in the post, as well as the little video I shot of the quality of these things. And hopefully you'll be able to pick one up for yourself. Next up, Joe from GameSack just reviewed the Polymega console, and it was interesting. It kind of performed like you would have expected it to perform when it was brand new and announced back in 2018. Certainly didn't feel like a product that's been announced and worked on for 6 years. So I know I'm being a little bit critical, but I think my negativity really comes down to the price. Because a lot of the other stuff that happened, a lot of the delays and all of that, maybe it was their fault, maybe it wasn't, maybe it was a combination of both, but that's the type of stuff that could really happen to any of us, especially if you've never really manufactured anything like this before. But the price started out as $250, and now it's $550. So that's kind of my biggest gripe with this thing, is something that's that expensive just for the base model without any of the extra attachments should really perform a little bit better than that, especially with the latency, which I tested a couple of years ago when they sent me one to try out, and it was fine, but it seems to have gotten worse, and the audio latency definitely got worse. Joe tested quite a high amount of latency between when something happens on screen and when you hear the effect, coming through the speakers. So the only thing Joe got wrong, and I'm not throwing shade because this is something I probably would have gotten wrong as well, is he saw an option for MSU1 audio and assumed that it just wasn't supposed to be there because you can't use ROM carts. Because the way consoles like this work, you put your cartridge in and it dumps the ROM to the hard drive, and then you're actually playing a ROM. Same with the Retron 5 and anything that works with software emulation like this. So because you can't go through the menu and then select your game, then there's no way to actually use a ROM cart with consoles like this. So Joe just assumed that it wasn't going to work at all with MSU1, which I would have as well, but you actually can. You have to, and shout out to Ray Commend for letting me know about this one and pointing me to their website. But all you have to do is extract the MSU1 pack into the patch directory under the game's own subdirectory on the USB stick or SD card. And then when you plug in your original cartridge, it'll dump the ROM and then give you the option to enable the MSU1 patch. That's actually pretty awesome. I really think that's a very cool feature, and something that Polymega should be bragging about. They should put up a little video showing that you could do this, because while technically you're still running a patched ROM, you do get the tactile sensation of plugging in your favorite Super Nintendo game that has that patch and then being able to use it like that. So that was pretty cool. But other than that, I'm just going to try to keep this as positive as possible. I just don't. The price is really what gets me now. All the other stuff was very annoying, but I don't understand who would spend almost $1,000 on this with all of the modules when you could end up getting a fully loaded Mister and like a ROM dumper, like one of those Sany cart readers or something, and have essentially the same thing. Or if you're just using discs, you could just buy a USB CD or DVD drive and rip your own games and stuff like that. But I wanted to love this thing at 250 bucks. If you had a wall of CD based games that you just wanted to play on your flat panel, even if it performed like this, it still just might be an easy and cool option. But at 550, you're definitely better off buying a Mister. Even if you hate configuration and you hate dealing with ISOs, just spend 5 minutes learning how to do it and then rip your games as you want to play them. You don't have to sit there and rip every one of your games. Just go, oh, I want to play this game today. All right, well, I'm going to put it in my drive, start the rip, then go set everything up. By the time I come back, the game will be ready. Copy that to your Mister or just your Retro NAS, and you're done. So I don't know. I'd like to know if you all think that there's a market for this at $550 for a base model, because maybe I'm missing something. But I just, as much as I love physical media and I really prefer using it when possible, when it makes the most sense, I would never trade off performance and lose extra money on this over something like a Mister that'll perform far, far better. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Next up, on a much lighter note, pre-orders are now open for an official reissue of Tempest 3000 for the Nuon. So Tempest 3000 is another Jeff Minter game that was originally released on the Nuon, and they're pretty hard to find. They didn't make that many of them. I mean, they didn't really make that many Nuons either, but now if you own a Nuon and you're looking to play the game and you'd like an original disc, this is definitely the next best thing, and possibly even better because it's brand new. Now, this is a genuine mass-produced, professionally glass-mastered DVD. This isn't like a CDR that's been officially licensed or something like that. This is a real printing of it, much like Songbird Productions' previous releases. And it comes complete in box in a shrink-wrapped DVD case with a manual, and everything's full color and all that stuff. So this is by no means a cheap repro. This is essentially an official game, just like you would have bought it. It just says on it, that it's a limited edition. So these, the price is $80, and they should ship in May. So if you want any more information on this, or if you'd like to pre-order them, definitely check out the link. I believe that they're also offering a discount if you buy multiple games from them. So you might want to check that out if you want to buy the other things that Songbird had released, the 2 or 3 other Nuon games that they had done official licensed reprints on. And if you want to see the Nuon in action, I did a live stream a while back with Kevin from Nuon Dome, as well as Robert Dale Smith, who created the controller adapter for it. Sadly, the firmware version of the controller adapter I had was the wrong one for Tempest with a spinner support. So if you do want to check out Tempest 3000, you could kind of see the game, hear its music, but you won't be able to see the full spinner support in that live stream. So I should probably just do another quick one, like just a quick video showing it working. But yeah, check it out if you're interested. And I'm always a fan of the Tempest games. And if you have a Nuon, this kind of seems like something that you should probably own. Next up, Yahel from Wrestling with Gaming just posted a documentary about the making of the Game Boy. And even if you already know the basic story, I think you should still watch this. And in fact, I would think that anybody who's either interested in the Game Boy or just video game history at all would be interested in it. And it was pretty cool to see the origins, but also clarify some things that I never really knew about it, like who is the true creator of the Game Boy, and that it was actually canceled before it was then brought back. And I don't know, it was a great story. Yahel, as always, did a great job telling it. So please, consider supporting on Patreon if you want to see more of these, and at the very least, watch the video. There's definitely one thing I have to call him out on, all positive, by the way, but I have to mention something like this, especially who I am and where I stand on a lot of these issues. At the very beginning of the documentary, Yahel did kind of an ad for a book, and I quickly got the impression that Yahel was basically just like, I've used a lot of quotes from this book, and I've credited it in the comments, but I want to do more. So let me just, let me see what I could do and do an ad for it. And I asked him about it, and that's exactly what it was. And I just think that's amazing. I mean, we live in a time where there are plenty of YouTube channels and blogs that make a very comfortable living just copying and pasting what other people say. And most of the time they pretend it's their own info and don't credit it all. Sometimes they throw their credit for sources used in a paste bin that no one ever looks at. So for Yahel to go the opposite and just say, hey, I used a lot of quotes. Obviously, I didn't fly to Japan and interview all these people, so why don't I just give a big thank you to the biggest source and do an ad in the beginning talking about how the book is going to be released in English soon, which that's also pretty cool because that's a book I would definitely buy. I can't read French or Spanish, so I would have to wait for the English release. But I just thought that was so cool, and I absolutely had to call him out on that because it's rare to see stuff like that these days. And it's just, I don't know, it's awesome. So if you want to hear more from Yahel, we did a couple of interviews and podcasts. We may have been a little tipsy towards the end of one of them, and yeah, no matter what though, check out the documentary. It's great. It flew by. It didn't feel like a almost hour-long documentary. It just was really entertaining, and I mean, it's exactly what you would expect from a wrestling with gaming documentary. Developer Mark Robledo just released 2 tools that are focused on the Super Game Boy. The first is a way to inject your own border on the Super Game Boy itself for use in emulation, specifically the Mister. So basically you could change the default border of the Super Game Boy to any file that you create within the certain tolerances of it. And while that is very awesome, the one that I think a lot more people are going to use is the ability to inject a custom border in each ROM that you would like to use. So maybe you're a ROM hacker that did like a cool quality of life hack for a game that doesn't have Super Game Boy borders. Now you could just add those right in. And I think that is very, very cool. Now, after I had posted this, the Dana Adams commented and said that the injected border and palette data does work on real hardware, but with a small bug. If while injecting the border, you neglect to enable and include the custom palette, the game area of the screen will not be visible when you load the ROM on original hardware. That doesn't seem to affect emulators, but for original hardware through a flash cart, just be warned that you just need to check off the custom palette. So that was a great tip. Thank you very much, Dana. I really appreciate that. But overall, this just is awesome. I really love work like this. I selfishly would like this used to do things like create a custom border for using Super Game Boy on the Mister when you're using it in the proper aspect ratio. Maybe Firebrand X could jump in and help us out with that one. But honestly, I think this is just a really cool thing for Game Boy ROM hackers to add custom borders and have full functionality as if it was made in the 90s with the Super Game Boy border. So thanks, Mark. Next up, Apple just posted an update to their developer page, specifically stating that game emulators are allowed in the iOS App Store. I don't think there's been too much more information other than that, and I'm really interested to see how this would be implemented and to see if this is a good thing or a bad thing. Now, very rarely would something like this be a bad thing, but there have been times in the past where opening one door closed 3 others type of thing. So I'm just very suspicious and cautious of this, as we all should be when a giant company starts to say they're allowing things like that. But I'm hoping for the best. I hope that means we could see ports of really good emulation, and maybe these software emulator devs would start adding more support for things like RetroNAS, because that would be one of the many ways that you could get around having any proprietary information on your Apple device. So imagine you have an Apple TV hooked up to your TV and you load up a software emulator that doesn't have any proprietary info on it. It's all of the original code, but you point it to a directory on your RetroNAS that has the console BIOS and ROMs in it. There you go. So that might be the workaround. So I guess we're just at the point where it's like, fingers crossed, I hope this works out, but I would love to see, and I know this is wishful thinking and asking a lot, but we're really covered with 2D games, right? We're covered basically up to the late 90s with Mister. However, once 3D graphics games started to kick in, I would love to see those supported. Imagine Dolphin being supported on an Apple TV box, or even any Dreamcast or PlayStation 1 and 2 emulator, an N64. Really, times when you would want software emulation to render in higher resolution, even if it's render than scaled rather than render in native 4K or something. I think here's where software emulation is really going to be a big deal. Whereas, even if it's a perfect software emulation of a 2D side-scrolling game from the early 90s, you're probably still going to have a less laggy, more accurate experience on a Mister anyway. But it's just not going to be the case with some of those other games, especially with consoles that have frame buffers built in. The potential for latency being the exact same as the original is pretty high, comparatively speaking. So fingers crossed, but let's see. Maybe we can get Dolphin ported over to the iOS App Store and have them pointed to your home network in order to load ROMs on it. Fingers crossed. Now it's time for this week's Mister Updates, care of Lou from Lou's Retro Source. As usual, if you want more info and visual examples, please check out Lou's video, but let's jump in and see what we got. First up, some updates to Tap 2. There's going to be a mascot now named Taparoo, which is pretty funny. The designer's been updated with a model for print options with crop marks, and the Mr. Main fork now has the ability to load games with a system logo. Next, Modal Module, the developer who brought us the GameBoy MIDI core that lets you plug in MIDI instruments and create music using the Game Boy's audio hardware, seems to now be creating a MIDI core for the Capcom CPS2 hardware. That's pretty cool. Next, if you have an oscilloscope with a vector-based screen, you could now make the Vectrix core run on that. You would have to build your own circuit that requires being plugged into the VGA port and gives you BNC connectors on the outside, but that's pretty awesome. I love vector monitors. I would love to see, well, first I'd love to see vector games be ported over to the Mister, but I would also love to see some more vector monitor CRT kits out there. There were at least 2 that I knew of, but I'm not really sure what happened to those projects. But if you've never seen a vector monitor in person, it's a sight to behold. It's different. I don't think it's ever going to be something that would be properly emulated, but I don't know. That's a discussion for another day, I guess. Next, Hotego has added support for Pac-Mania to the JT House core that runs the Namco System 1 games. The core is still in beta, but there's also more fixes to the JT House and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles core in preparation for the public release. Next, Robert has now made the N64 core an official release and has decided to take a break from core development and pause the Patreon, which, you know, that's Robert's decision. I'm absolutely not going to say anything negative. I personally would have been more than happy to continue to support on Patreon, even if there were no updates for 6 months. I still want to make sure all the developers that put all this hard work into this stuff know that at least me and a lot of people I know are still wanting to support and wanting to eventually see more cores, but I get it. I understand that's a lot of pressure for some people to put on their shoulders, and they wouldn't want to do that knowing that they're not working diligently every month on stuff. So I respect his opinion, but Robert, know that whenever you want to come back, just come back. We'll all be here. We all want to support. Next up, Groovy Mister can now use inputs from controllers connected directly to a Mister. At the moment, it only works with Groovy MAME and MedDefend emulators, but holy crap, that's awesome. I still haven't had time to mess with this, which I'm very disappointed in myself, by the way, but now I kind of have to, because this is just getting cooler and cooler, and I want to start lag testing some of this stuff, because it's me. I have to. I have to lag test it. And lastly, there's a bunch of updates to the Amiga Vision project. The Amiga Vision project. So as usual, please subscribe to Lou on YouTube, because there is no possible way I would be able to keep up with all of this stuff without him. I rely on Lou's Mr. News every week, and hopefully can, talk about it with you all in a way that kind of fits us all. But either way, just definitely subscribe to Lou, because this info is great, and it's really exciting to be able to just keep up with all of this stuff in one place. Next up, Ivory from Retro Castle just opened a new web store. So this is one more option of where to buy those cases. And I wanted to talk about this just to clarify the link change, as well as just give a status update of those kits. So first of all, the main store is still going to be run out of China and run by Ivory from Retro Castle. The original AliExpress store is still going to be left open, but I wouldn't really go there unless you have a reason to. I think Ivory is moving away from that for the same reason that people in the US move away from Amazon, but also there is that AliExpress stigma so much around, where people just assume things on AliExpress are clones or low quality, when that's obviously not the case with this. But if you have any reason to, like maybe you already have your payment stuff in there, or I don't know if you have kind of coupon codes or credits or whatever, he's still listing them there. But if you have no choice or no preference and you're outside of the US, then I would just go through his main store. All of the kits that I talked about in the video are available, including the HDMI only one, which is my absolute favorite go-to for anybody just starting out. Just a small compact kit with a power button. Who would have thought? I can't say enough good things about that one. And of course, the analog video options are top tier as well. If you want more info on any of this stuff, please check out the deep dive video I did explaining what all the different models are and how they perform differently to each other. And also an update on the US pre-orders. The Retro Castle kits were one of the many, many projects that got caught in the Chinese New Year delays. But not only have they arrived to the US, they're already shipping out to people who have placed their pre-order. So if you're hearing this and you're like, what the hell? I bought this thing a month and a half ago and I haven't gotten it yet, or don't worry, it's probably en route to you as we say this. And hopefully all of that stuff goes smoothly. So I just, I can't say enough good things about these. There's many reasons why these are my favorites, which is why I titled the thumbnail Bob's Favorite Mr. Case. So if you don't believe me, check out that video for all the details. And if you're looking to purchase one, now you have a couple of different options and everything should be in stock, including the full completed kits. So you'd be able to just put your money in, you have a kit show up, and all you have to do is just load your ROMs basically and run an update. So links in the description if you're interested. Before I go, I just want to shout out a live stream Voultar did testing the PixelFX Morph. And I got to start by saying that this was a stream with Zach. This was a very laid back, slow and steady, polite and respectful stream that stuck to the technical aspects. Anytime that there was a mistake, Zach was like, oh no, hold on, I messed up. Let me go back. It's a fault of something else. And this was really just a polite and respectful way to go through the Morph in its current form. Now, me personally, I prefer Lord Voultar streams. I like the silly, over-the-top banter, and then the polite, respectful, technical conclusions, but with the silliness on top. However, I completely understand why he chose not to do that in this case, and it was probably the better move just to keep everything as professional as possible in this one case. Maybe I'll do a stream with him soon, reviewing something else where we could just be silly together again. But if you want a decent idea of what this is like, I would say skim it, because it's a slow and steady stream exactly like mine, for the same reason my streams are very often slow and step by step, because I'm trying to show everybody exactly how to test, both so you could learn to do it yourself, but also I want to make sure people know that my conclusions aren't just picking up a box and saying, doesn't feel like there's any lag in here. I actually go through and show step by step how I test this stuff. And very often people in the chat have given me suggestions that have made things more precise, or maybe even a little easier, or just different ways of doing the same thing so that we could prove things multiple ways. And I get the impression that's exactly what Zach was doing here. Just walking people through step by step how he was testing, what he was testing. But I believe at the very end, there was kind of a 5-minute sum up that just kind of gives his current thoughts on it today, right now. But remember, all of these scalers that were just released, there's definitely room for firmware improvements on all of them, including the RetroTink 4K, which has already had some pretty massive firmware updates, and Mike's still working on stuff. So very impressive to see where all of these go. And I hope to do a shootout, maybe when the analog modules are released from the Morph, maybe I could do like a 2024 scalar shootout video where I really show why each one might be the best choice for you or might not, in all fairness to all of them. So we'll see. I want to give them time to iron out some of the beta bugs, and I also got to see what the analog modules are like. Otherwise, I can't really do an in-depth review comparing them to anything else, but I guess that's all in the future. For now, just check out Zach's stream if you're interested, and I think it's a pretty fair assessment of what to expect. Well, that's it for this week. As always, thanks to everybody who watches, listens, plays nicely in the comments, and especially thank you to anybody who supports in any way, because it really is you who's keeping all this stuff going. So thank you all so much, and I'll see you next week. This week's Roundup is brought to you by Neo Paradigm Entertainment, connecting Southeast Asian influencers with opportunities in the West.